going to share this mic because I want to do the least amount of talking tonight. I'm going to ask some questions for you guys and just talk us through everything. So first of all, just take a mic, pass it down, introduce yourself, your company, and what you do.
Hey, I'm Ryan Huggins, and me and my wife, along with a couple friends, started Monkey Brittle here in Hood River. It's an organic snack food made with all produce, bananas, nuts, and raisins, nothing else in there. So we're kind of trying to help lead the healthy snacking revolution and use just real whole ingredients. 100% produce-based snack foods.
I'm Wes Lapp. I co-founded Real Carbon and ran it for a bunch of years and was chief engineer. I'm currently doing a startup that's stealth mode, so I am not talking about that. But I've been doing that for the last year, and love Hood River, and yeah, my background's mainly in carbon fiber with tons of like innovation because we had to survive.
Hey guys, I'm Rudy. I'm one of the founders and CEO of Freem Family Brewers. We brew beer in beautiful Hood River, Oregon. We've been doing that for 12 years. We're something like the 45th largest brewery in the country now, which is pretty cool. Thanks for coming. This is really cool, and love to answer questions, have a good conversation, and just like talk about how we did it, and maybe weave some innovation into it.
Absolutely. I love, like you put it on paper, you've got someone who makes beer, someone who spent a good career in carbon fiber, and someone who makes snack foods. Like, what do these guys have in common? How can we tie this together? Like, I think we'll get there, so it's going to be good. For starters, really broadly, like, what's your guys', in your different silos of influence, what is your innovative take in what you've done, whether it's been in creation, in business and branding? Like, what part of your business speaks innovative to you? Go ahead, let's start with Rudy.
Excellent. Maybe let's pull this. Yeah. I might start with the worst and most boring answer, which is for us, I view innovation as a kind of a tool. It's and we could get all philosophical about what that means. And innovation, I think, is largely, most people think of it as it's a tech thing, or there's some new patent or some new it's very kind of has a very techie connotation. So I think you got to think about innovation broadly. Do I have a different product, new material, different business model, different approach to doing business? That's, to me, all those things could be innovation. But for us, the reason I say it's kind of a boring thing is we started Freem. There were 4,500 breweries out in the country, and there's 10,000 now. And there are a lot of people doing beer, and a lot of folks that are extremely innovative, creating all these new beers and with new innovative hops and materials and with these new techniques and chasing super niche-y things. Our approach has always been quality and wanting to build a long-term generational business. So that was in a way the way we were really different from other folks in our space is our business is kind of dominated by a lot of hobby brewers that want to scale up a hobby into a business, but they don't really understand the end point of their desire of what kind of business they want to build. They just want to survive. They just want to open a business, right? And that's very, very, very common in our space. Out of the 10,000 breweries in the country now, 9,800 of them are really, really, really small operations. Only a couple hundred are actual larger businesses, actual enterprises. So I think part of our the way we were different is we always thought about it as not just opening a business to run one. We always wanted to kind of grow a larger business and have a larger scale enterprise. And the way, and that was in a way extremely innovative and very different at the time in our space. So we always kind of worked towards that. And, we could talk more about innovation in terms of materials and all those different things, but to me it's just a tool. And it's just a way of, answering the question, how are you different? Are you different because you have a different product, different flavor, different something, or you make it in a different way? Or are you different because you actually have a different path that you want to follow? So that's kind of our view of innovation at that top level.
Yay. So my journey was starting as an aerospace engineer, getting into carbon fiber, working at a defense contractor and learning about it, and then wanting to apply that to windsurfing and then other things. And we came to the Gorge to make boards in 1990. And almost immediately, like in 1990, there was no recreational equipment made in Asia at all. and it all like went to Asia over like the next 10 years. And so we had a whole commercial line of booms and bike parts we made, different things, and that kind of all went away. So the challenge for us was, how do we apply this really expensive material that has amazing properties to and connect with people that have use cases that make sense? And maybe half the innovation was just being able to like vet the potential customers for where it would actually work. Like, is this even possible? Are we waste even if they would pay us money? It's like we're just going to waste our time. Like we're kind of, we want to like develop a production product that we can make every month and make some money on. It was just like kind of time after time of like, oh my God, we'll do this and look at this some money, and we make the thing and they're like, well, it turns out it's too expensive. We're like we told you anyway. So yeah, I can reflect on that part of the innovation story as we go along.
There you go. Yeah, so for us, it's kind of... Hello. So like for us, we have like an innovative product in the food space, whereas most of the new kind of better for you products include a lot of substitutes to make them taste more like the not as good for you products, like sugar alcohols are replacing sugar. So like the aspartame's gone. Maybe now you have erythritol, xylitol, a bunch of other things that are not as digestible. So for our brand and our innovation, we kind of took it back to like, okay, how do we use really whole, actual, real ingredients? The monkey brittle that I brought here tonight, please grab a bag. It's in the back when you leave. But there's bananas, nuts, raisins in there. Absolutely nothing else. So it's like, how do you take something like that and make a unique snack out of it? And so that's kind of like the charge behind our business. But kind of more speaking to what Rudy said, like, anyone who's created a product or a brand or a company has innovated in some way. But there's a lot of steps beyond that in being innovative that you have to pursue in order to actually make a company successful. And so for us, that's been things like taking alternative sales channels, because in the food industry, it's just so massive and built for such large companies that like you start out with your local grocer, health food store. That's all great. That's good and well, but then you take that next step and you kind of leap into, distribution and these, larger kind of structures, and it's all pay to play. And it's really hard for the little guy to kind of wiggle their way into that massively built system. And so we've had to do things like kind of look at sales opportunities differently. And if we're getting, like, people tend to like our product, so what we need is exposure. But exposure either costs money through ad dollars, or you got to figure out some other creative way to get it. So what we've done a lot of is sold our product to outlets where it's kind of break even for us, but we're earning a lot of free marketing dollar out of it. So like we sell to the home goods store. They're a discount store. It's not like the best brand you'd want to be associated with in all cases, but the amount of exposure we get nationwide and the amount of direct orders we see off our website from selling to someone like them actually like brings revenue to us and helps us, grow and succeed as a company, as opposed to just paying, someone at a grocery store for the slotting fee, paying the distributor for their setup fees. And so it's like, how can you innovate from like a sales perspective, apart from just a product perspective? And, how can you push your company further, innovating in different ways like that? So I'm happy to reflect on those.
No, I think that's great. And I think hearing from all of you, like, have that, 25,000 foot view, here's what it's looked like from really high level stuff. Tell me more. Have there been specific small moments, like more molecular, where you've had either like one aha moment or one employee came to you, that age old story is like, hey boss, what if we did it this way? And you're like, oh my gosh, you just saved us millions of dollars. Can you think about like a story, and it's okay if you don't have one, but a story like that where you have that aha turning point moment where you decided to do things differently and it made a world of difference? Whoever wants to take it.
I got a quick one. For us, it was kind of just willingness to experiment because we dehydrate all our product. And we originally started with like a 4-day dwell time, which is how long your product's in the dehydrator. And it's tough to do, but you kind of always have to take a leap of faith to innovate. And so we, through different combinations of just heat, temperature, and exhaust settings, we're able to cut our total production time, per dehydrator batch from 4 days down to 36 hours. And so things like that, it's not a huge innovation, but it's still like taking a leap of faith, risking a bunch of product and ingredients that you put into your dehydrator. And I'm sure there's a ton of that. And you guys are developing new beers all the time. You're developing new carbon products. Like, you got to put yourself out there and be willing to lose a little to gain a lot. And so like cutting our production time in half, that was obviously, we doubled our capacity with the same exact equipment, same exact capital investment in equipment.
I'm ready. He's ready.
Hello. Keep turning it off on me. I'll give maybe a large, like more corporate answer. If I keep doing that and it's like the wrong answer, tell me and I'll go more micro. But for us, like the answer has been like a lot about leadership. There's certain, there's like no like one aha thing. I think the big aha thing that we've learned is like at some scale, the way you kind of motivate innovation and that the way you create these like aha moments is you've got to put the right leaders in place over in the like departments where innovation can happen. So like you've got to have the right person running in our world. If you've got the right person running the lab that does a lot of our analysis and is like really involved in the beer. If you got the right person that can do like all the day-to-day stuff, but also be like super innovative, looking at new techniques, new technologies, really important. And then the brewing department, right, where we have we do all of our production, right? Like our production isn't you don't show up every day and just like make Pilsner, right, and like just like turn the crank. Right, Pilsner's good, and it's like getting better, but it's getting better every day. Like the Pilsner you're having today is not the same Pilsner you had 2 years ago. It's better, and the reason it's better is that we work on it, and like every single day we're trying to make it better. So you've got to have the right leaders in those departments, and both in production and both basically in lab and R&D, who are able to manage day-to-day production and like just make things happen, keep it turning, but also have a continuous improvement mindset, and a very technical and scientific mindset. So we've had in the past, and we've been doing this for 12 and a half years, right? In the past, we've had leadership that was very production oriented, but found it very challenging to take chances, do different things, and like do R&D. And then we've had leadership who's been very like amazing, where they've been able to get the production done and have super high quality, but also be able to work innovation into the process and inspire their team to like figure out new shit. So that's kind of my view on it all. Is when you get to a certain scale in this business, hopefully like many of the startups here are going to get there. You've got to have the people in running these departments where a lot of that magic can happen. And the right people could make that magic and create those aha moments, right? Like on a consistent basis all the time.
You keep this one. I'll keep this one. Yeah, that works. Perfect. I love it. I want to talk, and this is going back to a little bit of an overarching view again. And so I'll keep it kind of vague, but talk to me about how competition has played in to your experience in innovation, because I see two sides of it. I hear stories about, let's take breweries, for example, breweries collaborating and having some really cool beer, maybe a style that hasn't really been made before. But then also you're capturing the same customer. So how have you seen those relationships played out? Net positive, net negative? Tell stories about good experience or maybe bad experience. How do you balance competition with innovation?
Well, actually, I came up with my 5 steps for innovation as a process, and there'll be a quiz on these later. But I'll tell a story that illustrates one, which is if you get stuck, what do you do? And for us, for me, it was like ask and ask and ask. Ask your vendors who are supplying you stuff. Ask your customers. Ask your production workers. Ask your friends. Ask people you know that are smart. Ask people that you know that you don't think are smart. But also ask your competitors. And it's amazing. One thing I've learned from living in the Upper Valley is the best way to get to know your neighbor is to go over to them and ask them for something. Ask if you can borrow their snow shovel. People love it. They don't want to be indebted to you, but they like if you're indebted to them. So if I call up my competitor and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this part, would you mind taking a look at it and just, if you can tell me something, that'd be great. They're like, sure, Wes, come on over, Steve at ICE, I'd bring a part over and he'd go, oh man, this is tough, And so I'd say, on the competition side, if you're trying to innovate and you get stuck, you reach out, it never hurts to ask.
All right. In the food biz, it's a little tricky because there's so many companies that are well established and can potentially produce the product that you're already making. And so like we went to Expo West last year, which is in Los Angeles. It's the biggest natural food show in the US. And the number of people that stop by from like Kind Bar or Rind Snacks, the owner of Rind Snacks, emailed me a few months ago, and he was like, I've been buying your product. I really like it. And then I read an article on Rind Snacks. It says, we've just spent $20 million on a new innovation R&D line that we're doing in Pennsylvania or something. And it gets your nerves popping a little bit. But it's, to what Wes said, like, the more you learn about the competition and what's out there, the better you can be either in making your product better by seeing, the attributes in other products, or transversely by differentiating yourself from those products in different ways. And so that's like, when I opened up talking about like sugar alcohols and stuff, like there's so many substitutes that are going into products now that are better for you. And so we found a way to differentiate ourselves and our marketing message and our brand by kind of just having this message of like, we are whole, real ingredients. There's no substitutes there. So like in looking at competition, we've learned that a lot of our competition uses maltodextrin and erythritol and things like that, and so like that's our differentiator. So even though we haven't like learned how to develop our products better from talking with them, we've learned how to develop our brand and our marketing better, and that's an innovation in itself. So that's good.
I think for us, craft breweries are we compete like fiercely in the market, but the reality is like there's a lot of technical collaboration that occurs, because like ultimately we're all fighting the same fight. We're fighting for craft beer to have a higher share of beer dollars spent in the country, compared to big beer, compared to like industrialized giganto beer, right? Anheuser-Busch, Miller Coors, those guys. So we're all like in it together. We're kind of fighting the same fight. So there's a ton of technical collaboration. When there's like when somebody has an issue, like all the lab people talk, all the production people talk. So it's funny because we're all like extremely competitive with one another, because we are fighting for the same craft dollar, but at the same time there is like super open technical collaboration, because I think we have a feeling of like a togetherness with this like big market that we're trying to grab a small piece of. So it's funny that way.
I'm just curious. It's like they're saying that like drinking in general is decreasing a little bit. Is the craft beer market in total like selling less or more than ever?
The craft beer market's been down about 3% by dollar spent every year for the past 4 years. So ever since COVID, craft beer has been down. Big beer, like all beer has been about flat, because there's a lot of like imports that are growing. So like Modelo is killing it. Like essentially there's only two categories of beer growing these days: craft imports, which are basically all Mexican imports, because Modelo and Corona are just dominating right now, and then NA, non-alcoholic beer. That's a whole different. Like, we talk all night, but craft has been shrinking. So part of our thing over the last 4 years has been, the only way to grow in a shrinking market is to grow market share, right? So then how do we grab more market share? So like one of the the innovative approaches we've taken over the last 4 or 5 years is we're investing a ton of money into sales. Like we have, a lot of salespeople to ensure that we're represented at Safeway, Albertsons, Fred Meyer, the game, all these things. So we've had to make big investments in sales to continue to grow in a shrinking market. So, that's been like a major, oops in craft beer, and a lot of folks who laid off their whole like sales teams during COVID because, what's the most expensive part of your P&L, right? It's SG&A, right? Sales, general, administrative expenses. That's where like you get killed if you don't watch it. A lot of those, our peers just got rid of their, sales and marketing teams because they're really expensive and haven't rebuilt that. So I think like, recognizing that like if you could do well in a shrinking market, not if it's like radically shrinking and dying, right? But like people are going to still be drinking beer, 5-10 years from now, I'm pretty sure. So beer's going to be fine. It's just becoming more challenging, and I think you have to realize you got to adapt, right? Like you're not like it's no longer the passing game; it's like the running game now, right? Like you're grinding out the game. You're not doing like 75-yard passes. So it's a different offense and different strategy you end up having to run based on like the market dynamic around you, and that's like that's a whole other conversation we can get into.
Kind of a little bit along those same lines. It's always fun to like come up here and like talk about all the success stories and all that. It's always a really fun question to ask. Like, tell me about a failure. Like, I think a lot of people are afraid to innovate, to do things differently because they don't want to risk it. They don't want to risk, something going bad, losing out on money. Tell me about a time where you felt in your business there is a momentum and a need to innovate, to do something different. You tried something different and it didn't work the way you wanted. Was there any silver lining in that?
You've never done it.
It'll take me a long time to think of one. I need like 15 minutes to come up with
No, I'll tell you a story. So we had this customer come in and they made gravel sorting machines. So these big machines that shook these big trays and rocks would come in and the small rocks would fall through the bottom. And he had a trade show coming up and he wanted to, they used a lot of electricity and they had these big motors and they wanted to make it lighter, make the grates lighter. And then the motors could be less and less wear and tear and everything. And so he paid us a bunch of money to make a tool for one of these grates. And so who knows Brian Priegel? You guys know him? Yeah? Local machinist, great guy, made a lot of tools for us. So Brian makes this big tool, and it kind of looks like an ice cube tray, for all the carbon to go in. It's got a flat top. So we make the part looks beautiful. We can't get out of the mold. Like at all. Like we're put in the freezer, we try like bending the mold to pry it out, like it won't come out. And I'm just like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And this guy has his trade show in like 2 weeks. And the tool's like, it's like a $5,000 tool. And like theoretically we could make another one, but it's not gonna be ready in time, like nothing's gonna be ready. So I'm like, okay, Brian, just cut the tool away, but don't hurt the part, right? He's like, really? I'm like, yep. So he's cutting on the aluminum tool. It all falls apart. We get the part. We just give it to the customer, right? And well, maybe this came out okay. Actually, in the end, so he takes it to the trade show. He takes it to the trade show, and he has in the booth. And he has all the people come by, and this is a huge company that makes these multi-million, it's like the Grader and Excavation Expo in Montana or something. And we said, how'd it go? And he was like, it was great. Everyone loved the carbon fiber part, and there's something new to show people and everything. He goes, but no one wanted to try it. They all thought it would just instantly turn to dust and it was a stupid idea. And we're like, oh, that's too bad. And we never told him that his tool had gotten destroyed.
I'm not sure I got one here. Oh, I guess on the same subject of innovating to try and find efficiencies, you can't get too greedy with it either, because we tried to decrease our dwell time again from 36 hours to 12, and we ended up with some crispy burnt brittle, that's for sure. But nothing much beyond that. We're only 3 years in. There's been a lot more blunders with just like knowing the industry properly, and it's like like Rudy said, like you want to hire people that are going to excel in their position, but like we're really bootstrapped and we're really young, and we don't have the dollar to hire that person of that quality yet. And so it's me. So I get to make all the mistakes and all the triumphs, and I take both on the back. But yeah, we've had some scenarios dealing with big distributors where you just get caught in a bind where you've shipped product to someone and then they've miscommunicated with their customer where it's going to, and just turns into a whole cluster, and you don't want to deal with it. Right now, we actually have to go pick up about $8,000 worth of a product from a distributor in Portland because they bought a small distributor that we worked with. It turned into a whole mess. They didn't supply our customers properly. We switched to a different distributor to supply the customers, but they had already ordered product for the distributor that bought the smaller one. They had reordered, so now they have a ton of product on hand, no one to sell it to. They're going to sell it back to us at the price that they paid us, plus their storage fees and everything else. So there's a lot of ways you can get screwed, jumping as a small guy into a big game.
I'll add one more little bit onto mine. So one thing we learned when we had issues, and the guys would come or the people, workers, we had women workers too, the workers would come and they'd have some big thing, and I'd be like, oh, what's the most important thing? And if they were new, they didn't know the answer, and the older workers, the more experienced workers would be like, it's to figure out what caused it. And that was one thing we learned early on. Like, you can have a problem and someone can come up with a solution and it can work, but sometimes you don't know why it works, right? Like, oh, if we do this, it's fixed. And you're like, yeah, but why is it like that? Well, I don't know. It's just the way the machine works. And it's like, that's horrible, because down the road, you're going to be in that situation again and you're not going to know. But the lesson from that for us was, if we have a failure and we figure out what caused the failure, that's the thing we didn't understand before. That's usually why it failed. So we have that understanding. So that's a huge win, because the next time we can build that into the thing, and that kind of goes with the stack mentality of, you have a certain product or a certain process, you can make a certain thing, and if you figure out a new thing you can stack on top of that, then you can have that added value or that extra thing, and you keep having that innovation with the knowledge, and you keep stacking those things, and you can stack them different ways and have different things, and that's when it gets really powerful. But yeah, the most important thing was figuring out why things went sideways.
I love that answer.
I wrote this question originally for Rudy and Freem, but I think it kind of can pertain to anybody. We're a small town. We're not a huge town. Are there any ways where the local culture of Hood River has influenced your innovation in the way that you choose to move towards maybe certain styles of beer or certain customer preferences? Have you been influenced by that, by responding to a local market before you go to a bigger market?
Not at all, which is great. The big influence, of course, and I'll say of course, right? It's not of course. The big influence for us with respect to the local market has been that there's a standard for beer, in Hood River. Hood River it really is a beer town. Full Sail is one of the oldest breweries in the country, oldest craft breweries in the country, right? We have extremely high number of breweries per capita. So to me, the way I think about how the local culture is influenced, not necessarily innovation, but just the business, is that there's a brewing tradition that has been created in Hood River, which is a beautiful thing, right? And I think it lends a lot of credibility to producers here, all of them, us included. Similarly to if there's more technical innovation, and similarly to the aerospace market, right? There's now a tradition in town that's an industry. That's part of the fabric of the town. And in craft beer, that plays a special role, because craft beer is super. It's very local, right? It's very locally oriented. It's very kind of terroir driven, not in the soil way like wine, but in the way of this is a gorge brewery, right? We brew certain styles of beer in the Pacific Northwest. So that's been the cultural like importance of Hood River for us has been that, you know, it creates credibility for a brewery because you're in Hood River. Like Hood River's cool, right? Like this is a really cool place. And we're also known for like making cool beverages, whether it's, you know, beer, wine, like we're on the map now, you know, as the gorge of like alcohol, which is amazing, right? You know, and you could like sit here all day, like stigmatize alcohol. Oh my God, it causes cancer. There's like a new Surgeon General's warning thing. Like there's a lot of drama around alcohol, but you know, a lot of people are having a drink here tonight. You know, thank you. Thank you for supporting your local brewer or your local like vineyard. These people make things, right? And that's like the beauty of this whole place is, you know, we give people a fair living wage to show up to work, to buy ingredients that are grown, you know, by farmers and harvested by people and processed by people. We're like, this is an agricultural business, right? We're adding human value to an agricultural raw material and turning it into a cool product that people enjoy. Fuck. I mean, that's awesome. So I think that's like the key part of the local, you know, the culture and how the culture has really influenced us is, you know, this is now a community that makes incredible alcoholic products, right? On the Washington side, Oregon side, everywhere. And that's a tradition that, you know, we kind of stand on, and it helps us hire folks. It helps like create a supply chain of people who support the business. It touches us every single day.
I think some of the street signs have banners that say "Stay, play, and sip." So like it's known. We're the gorge now. We're a booze town, I guess. Sorry if it's yeah. It seems to be.
Let's make you sound bad.
Yeah, no, don't not a booze town. Sorry, but yeah, stay, play, and sip with sweet libations. That's what you need. Yeah. Yeah.
Do either of you want to speak on how has Hood River Gorge culture influenced how you do things or what you do? You know, I to lead you a little bit, Wes, I think yes, Hood River has been like a beer town. It's also been a birthplace of so much drone technology and windsurfing technology, and all that carbon fiber kind of came from here. Like, you know, how local did your customers start in the very beginning days of real carbon, and how responsive did you have to be for them for that reason?
Yeah. So one thing, you know, it's like the classic pivot story, right? We're making boards. We're not making any money. All the boards are going to China, you know, and coming from, I mean, the European ones are plastic. They're not that good. You know, so when we moved here, there were 20 manufacturers of custom boards, not just shops, 20 manufacturers, Pettit, I mean, on and on, you know, Tommy Priester, Rutger, Dill, you know, whole list. And then that just shrunk incredibly fast. And so I'd like to say we were like, what can we make? But it wasn't like that. It was, we kind of were just like, we don't know what to do. And then people were like coming up to us and say, hey, can you make this? And we're like, yeah, but you don't have any money for tooling. and they're like, yeah, but we really need this. You know, there's a guy that wanted a carbon boom. Tommy Hale made booms in the old days. And so we figured out a way to, like, the booms were bent and we needed a metal tool that was all, normally you'd like have a big piece of aluminum and you'd machine it out of the aluminum. And we figured out we could take just some thicker walled aluminum and bend it like it was a boom and then cut it in half with a hacksaw. And I remember cutting it in half by hand, and it took me like 6 hours. It actually was a jeweler saw, so it was a really tiny blade, and I cut the whole thing in half. But then we had this tool, and we had hose clamps, and we were making these carbon booms. And then we figured out we innovated a better way to do it. Actually, our customer came to us, Chinook came to us, the tech guy there, with an idea of how to do it better. And he's like, try this. And so we tried it, and it worked. And so we started making booms for Chinook. We made all Chinook's booms for 10 years. Yeah, that was like our bread and butter. That was our first real product that made money and we could scale and all that stuff. So anyway, yeah. And that DNA is in all the drones and all that stuff with multiple companies, not just ours. Yeah.
Ryan, I want to ask this question for you and Monkey Brittle. Your product it's different. Like there are some things that's like, this is kind of similar. There's some snack products that are in there. But were there challenges to, I mean, like explaining is like, yeah, it's this, it's like this, but it's not this. Or have you ever found like a product was like too innovative? Did you ever have that problem?
I think it's still a primary challenge that we're facing is like you walk into a grocery store, you see a bag that says monkey brittle on it. It's like, what the hell is that? We considered calling it banana nut brittle because it's a little more explanatory. But like pretty much we need eyeballs and exposure, but those eyeballs and exposure has to result in a customer seeing a product that's attractive enough to buy. And it's like online we can try different keywords and advertising. We can try different keywords. If we get to interact with a customer, it's a pretty easy sell. It's like, it's a bananas, nuts, and raisins. It tastes like a banana bread, except crispy. It's like everyone knows what banana bread tastes like. Most people like it. It's a pretty easy sell. But we found that it's really easy to get lost in the center of a grocery store on a random shelf. If someone places us one shelf up from the bottom, from the floor, and we're center store by some other nuts and stuff, it's like the very curious, inquisitive customer might find us and might want to try it, but they have to be like interested in bananas, open to trying new things. Like I'm not that consumer. I don't go into the store and I'm like, oh, what kind of random shit could I find here today? So that's definitely it's still a challenge for us. And so like sometime soon someone will come out with a product really similar to ours, and it's like, yeah, I fear that day, but I also welcome it a little bit because their marketing dollar is going to go into our marketing dollar a little bit, and so there's some positives there. But yeah, it's a challenge we're still facing daily and trying to figure out like, okay, we're launching on Amazon like next week, and we're like, do we call this banana nut brittle in the title? Do we call it monkey brittle? And no one's searching for monkey brittle. So yeah, that's like something. I'm open to ideas. You guys got some genius marketing ideas going forward? Kind of let me know, because we're doing well enough, but we could do a lot better. And informing the public of what we have to offer them is like challenge number one, because it's not getting in their hands and in their mouths and in their grocery carts without that. So yeah, definitely a challenge and something we're still trying to skin every day. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I've got one more question. We're going to have a little bit of time for some audience Q&A, so be thinking if there's something you want to ask an individual or all of them. I'll regurgitate the questions so everyone can hear them. But this question was specifically written for Wes, but I think I'll try and broaden it so that if anyone else wants to answer, you can have that too. Wes, you did a lot of custom building, specifically working on a project for a customer. Can you tell me a story where that customer comes to you, describes what they want, and you're just like, it can't be done? Did you stick with that can't be done answer, or did you find a way? And if there's, for Rudy or Ryan, if there's any other way where you're like meeting the demands of either customers or whatever, if you can think of a story that you think there's no way to do this, and then you figure out a way to do it. Okay. I want to hear that story.
Yeah, no. So I'll tie that into precept number 2, and remember, there will be a quiz. And that's, how do you get better and more challenging work? And I'm just going to read you this. Tell everyone that you are an innovator, and that you're working on innovative projects, and that you work on any project, no matter how challenging. And when potential customers ask you if you can do it, tell them, like they'll ask you, do you know how this is going to work? And you're like, I don't know how it's going to work, but I know I can figure it out. That is the magic answer. Because actually, customers don't want someone who knows how to do it, because they haven't been able to figure out how to do it, and they don't think anyone else knows how to do it. And if someone's telling them, I know how to do this, that you just come off like an egotistical know-it-all, and they're like, but they really want a partner to figure it out with, because they want to make sure it's what they need. So you're like, if you say, if you're willing to work with me on this, I know we can figure out how to do it. Even though I don't know how it's going to work. Like, I have no idea right now how it's ever going to work, but I know, like, I've done lots of other crazy things. So a fun story. Wow. Something that's never going to work. Well, I'll tell you, actually, this is probably the part I'm most proud of. We had a company, Saint Gobain Crystals, come to us, and they had a contract with Oak Ridge National Laboratories, and they wanted this special detector, and it's a particle detector, and they wanted these big honeycomb carbon fiber pieces, but they had to be really, really thin, and they had to be waterproof. And we're like, carbon fiber isn't like the water doesn't go through it, but the resin will let moisture tread. It's kind of like plastic, you kind of gets the water soaked in it and it'll go through over time. And we're like, there's no way to make it. I mean, we can make it so there's no voids, but there's no way to make it where there's not going to be water egress. And they're talking about decades. Like they want the detector to be totally dry for 10, 20, 30 years. And so we didn't tell them that. We're just like, well, this will be a big challenge, but we'll figure it out. And we ended up getting like the thinnest stainless steel we could, was 0.5 millimeter of shim stock. And because the parts were hexagonally extruded, we could wrap the stainless steel shim stock in a circle around it and overlap it, and then wrap the carbon fiber around that. So the super thin, like metal made it waterproof, because metal is waterproof even if it's really, really thin. Like if it's 0.5 mil thin, it's still like, I don't know, 500 molecules or atoms thick. It's really thick. So that was an example of where we had something. A lot of times our customers would come to us and they'd be like, oh yeah, we've talked to 3 other companies, and they were all like, yeah, talk to Real Carbon. Like, which is back to the collaboration and the issues and, letting people know. Like, if you talk to other people's salespeople, well, there's another thing too of how to get new business. If you have a competitor like Steve Meyer, they make great tubes. Actually, they know more about making tubes actually, they're not allowed to say this. I can say it though. Say it. So ICE makes the tubes that extend the landing gear for the Falcon 9 rocket. Right? The landing gear comes down, and there are these pneumatic tubes that telescope out. And all that tech started with making windsurf masts. They made the best windsurf masts that would flex, that wouldn't bend. So they developed all this technology. But if someone would come to me and they would be like, oh, we want this tube, I'd be like, well, duh. Like, talk to ICE. They're the tube masters. But then once I did that, I'd call their sales guy and say, hey, John, did these guys ever call you? I referred them to you. So it's like, I get brownie points, right? So then next time John's like, oh, here's some wacky part. We don't want to do this engineering. It's like this little detailed tool. It's all knacky. They're like, yeah, talk to Wes, at Real Carbon. So that's a way of networking, even with your competitors. I mean, it's a little different with the monkey brittle, but I don't know. Maybe there's a pathway there. Right.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Open it up if you guys have some questions. We'd love to hear them for our panelists.
Actually, could I see how many people consider yourselves entrepreneurs? Like you're starting a business or thinking about starting a business, or you run a business, maybe somebody else, way up high. All right. And how many people feel like they're innovators in their current job, what they're doing? All right. All right, now I'm going to have you guys stand up. If you're thinking about hiring someone who you want to have innovate, right? You're going to hire someone who you need an innovator. Anyone out there? Oh, come on. Oh, one person. Other things. All right. Okay, everyone. And what's your name? Susanna. And who are you with? WorkSource. Excellent.
Nobody's hiring.
Always hiring. All right. Well, there you go. All right. Excellent. What was the question?
There wasn't. I was opening up for Q&A.
Oh! I was just going to ask them. No, I wanted to see who were the innovators and stuff. Okay, so let's go. Yeah.
But you previously mentioned you got 5 rules for innovation. I think we only got 1.
That's true. He gave us 2. There's a test.
Okay.
Wes, will you share the other 3 rules?
What were the 2 ones?
I think you said 1 and 2.
All right. Okay, so this is how to pick a product, right? So and this is kind of from the tech space, maybe different than monkey brittle, but when you're picking a product and you're deciding who you want your customer to be, we learned this the hard way. You want to make sure your customer is making a lot of money. If they're not making a lot of money, however successful your product is, it's not gonna go well. The other thing is you want to make sure that your product is being used by your customer to make the money they're making, right? Like I could be like, oh, well, anyway, like if I'm a landscaper, I could be like, oh, I want to do landscape for NVIDIA because they make a lot of money. But the landscaping isn't really part of how they make money. So you're not going to become part of the like super valuable value chain, like you are when you do that. And when we learned that and we started doing that, that's when we made products that lasted for decades. And we could raise the price 10%. Our customers didn't really care because we were adding so much value.
If you're thinking about making a food product, at least a snack food product, your cost should be probably about 1/5 of what it's going to be on the shelf. Because there's a lot of stuff on the internet that says a third. It's kind of BS. If you actually want to make money and not raise billions of dollars on the way, you should be making a $5 product for about $1. Right.
And I would say manufacturing, you want your nuts and bolts cost to be about 10%. Like you're buying aluminum, you're buying stainless steel screws, or whatever you're buying, manufacturing. So we went through how to get better and more challenging work, right? That's when they ask you if you can do it. Say, I don't know how, but I know I can figure it out if we work together. We went through what to do when you get stuck, right? Ask everyone. How to make money. Raise your hand if you want to know how to make money or make more money. Okay, this is what I learned. Number 1, focus on adding as much value as you can to all your customers. Number 1 focus, right? Add as much value as you can. But you're like, yeah, but how does that make us more money? Step 2, when you get busy, raise prices on all your products. Now, it's really important to raise prices, but it's also super important to raise prices on all your products. You will have products where you're like, well, we can't really raise prices on this because blah, 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 right? Some sob story. That's the product you want to get rid of by raising your price because you're not making any money. So you raise prices on all your product, and the ones that your customer doesn't see as value drop away. And the ones that your customer sees a lot of value, you get to keep a little bit more of that. So you keep adding value, but you raise prices when you get busy, right?
Be very careful with that one. No, totally. But I think I'd be like, that's very specific to a very niche-y, low volume, very specialized, high gross margin type of business where there's like very specific, technical capability, maybe capital equipment. Like you have a lot of juice that a lot of people don't have, which gives you that kind of pricing power. So like I think big caveat on that one is you have to understand the pricing power you have in the space that you're in. Because if you try to do that in a space that you may think you have pricing power, but you don't really have pricing power, good night. I think you could have a really bad time if you misplace that kind of strategy. So that would be my, I would say like the annex to Rule 5. That's like Rule 5A, like Rule 5.A1 would be like very specific and very careful to dial that in, if I may.
No, but actually, like in your case, you're talking about the pricing power you have and how it's hard to know what pricing power you command in the market. And my response would be like, if you raised all your prices 2% and you saw which things didn't move at all and which dropped, you'd have that feedback.
Totally, but I think the thing we need to sort of, and this is great, maybe there's a lesson here instead of just being funny, is you are in a B2B market. So your buyers are not fickle millennials that don't know what they want, or they don't really know how they want to get high next week, right? Totally. I mean, look, that's the business that we're in, right? Like, let's be honest. So I think, being a B2B business, and you're also, you're selling to professional buyers of equipment, right? Or parts. We are selling to anybody from 21 to 85 years old that shops in a million different ways. Buys like bottles and cans and this and that and 12s and 16s and kegs and a million different SKUs and formats and all that. So the our price lever and the reaction to that has to be like very differently managed, right? We're selling to consumers, right? This is a consumer product good. And so like the latency of feedback, and then Ryan was talking about, you get a SKU pulled from the shelf because you screwed up pricing, and all of a sudden you sold like 20% less units than people expected. You go in the penalty box. It's not there's like a very specific penalty to pay, and like you're off the shelf for the next 6 months, and then you got to come back like begging Safeway to put you back on, right? So yeah. Well, I mean, so the downside of losing a SKU is a lot worse than the upside of getting 2% more revenue, on a per unit basis. So you got to be really careful in how you play that game, and depending on the market that you're in and like who the buyer is, right? Like, do I understand the buyer behavior, right? Like, does the buyer have viable alternatives? And like, if you have a special sauce, then you could be like, oh yeah, sorry, we're busy, price went up. But, the reality is there are 10,000 breweries in the country, right? And, none of them are free, right? Like, go us. But there's a lot of buyers, out there who, they don't care. They're looking for a deal. They're looking for price per ounce or whatever. And we don't, we're not the cheap people, and we'll never will be, because that's how you die. But we also need to be really careful about where in that band, we're a premium brand, so we command premium pricing. But that, that's consumers are fickle, right? You screw that up by $1 per 6-pack, and I don't care who you are, you're gonna sell less, and the velocity goes down. So that's a dangerous game to play. You got to be good. Yes, sir.
So I think two takeaways is one, I think Wes is talking 80-20 rule. So if you're in a situation, and you're talking quarters, 5 forces for those people that know that. If you do not have strong positions, substitutes, or barriers to entry and stuff like that, your price power is lower. But if you can't maybe play this game where you raise your prices and then you're focusing on the 80-20 rule, where you are able to eliminate some fat if you are in that position.
Totally. I think that's a fantastic analysis. I like it. What I would say, excellent, right? What I'd say though is, you're also assuming, wait a minute, why can't we grow volume? My challenge back to you, this is great. I think I loved your answer. I'd be like, okay, well, I get it. The low gross margin stuff, let's not waste our time, and let's raise prices to try to figure out where the line is. But why, don't you want to, why wouldn't you want to grow and take more business and continue to, invest more heavily into growth and, effectively, trade off a little bit of overall margin, gross margin percentage for more gross margin dollars.
That's great, because that's rule number 5.
Full circle moments. Thank you, guys.
How to decide what to do, how to decide how to reinvest profits, right? So we grew Real Carbon. We didn't have any outside debt. We didn't have investors. We just made money. And then, at the end of the year, it's okay, well, this year, what are we going to do? We're going to buy a new piece of equipment. We're going to do more marketing, And the answer that I came up with after 20 years is, you want to ask the question, how will the investment add value for our customer, right? How is it going to add value? And you want to ask that question to your customer, to your production people, to your sales people, to whoever else is in your company. Ask your friends, ask and ask and ask. And don't just say, oh, should we buy this saw? Ask them, we're thinking about buying this saw, and I'm trying to understand how it's going to add value for our customer. Help me with that. And, and with the 80-20 rule, it was crazy. We bought a diamond drill bit one time that was $25 that saved us like $20,000 a year. It was insane, the return on investment. Because before we were like buying these drill bits and resharpening them all the time. It was a total pain, to drill a carbon fiber. So there are some things that you get a huge return on, and there's some things that you don't get as much. But the power of reinvesting your money every year is if you get a 10% return on that, you're 10% better or better costs or more production capacity, more growth, next year, you've got another shot. You've got another chunk of money you can spend. You can spend it maybe something's going to be 100 or 200% return. So you can do that. So even if you spend something and it barely moves the needle, hopefully it's good. And you'll make that money, again in a year or 6 months and be able to do it again. All right.
Did we get through all 5? Everyone took notes?
Yeah.
Sweet. Perfect. Thank you. We have time for one more question. Maybe 2. I see 2. We'll do 2. Go for it. You first.
I'm curious of a question based on the work that I do. And so you're all in different industries, but with different products, but we're all humans in that industry. It's the people that create what you're designing and bringing into the world. So that's the business I work in. So I'm curious about, when we talk about innovation, for clarity's sake, what I've heard you all say, it's about making something better. You make it better. It's a phrase we also use in spaces I've been in. So I'm curious, how have you innovated or how have you made better your own process to either lead yourself through stress of getting something going, your own personal way? How have you helped to make better your own internal process of leading yourself through your business? Or how have you made better, innovated, how you've led people in your business? What have you done to help improve, innovative your capacity to lead other people?
Perfect. I'll go ahead and repeat that. Just make sure everyone heard. And if I get anything wrong, just let me know. We're all in the people business, very different industries. How have you worked on yourselves to innovate yourselves to create your own better processes or better led the people that that work for you? Have you led them towards a better process? Did I capture that pretty well?
Yes.
Okay.
For us as like a small company, it's just making sure our employees have the right tool for the right job. And it's like a really classic thing. But unfortunately, I'm at the very bottom of that pile, and I stomp on myself constantly, and I got to work on, making myself comfortable and happy at work, but making sure the people that we employ are able to do their job as easily and comfortably as possible goes a long way. And I would do anything for our employees because they've been so awesome for us. And, it's a really small crew. We have 4 people up there, sometimes 5. And when you have a team that small, knowing you rely on them so significantly, like we put so much faith into them and we rely on them so heavily. And so just making sure that they feel that we're doing everything we can to make their job as comfortable as possible, because they're the ones, we're doing administrative work and it's hard, it's challenging to navigate our way through it and to make high level decisions about it, but they're doing that difficult work day in and day out. And so giving them the tools that they need to make sure they're just as comfortable as possible is, the kind of basis we stand on for all that.
I think for us, it's let me just kind of rethink the question. It's kind of like our style is like servant leadership. The way we manage and the way we lead at Freem, and the kind of leaders that are successful at Freem they're not like, oh, look at me, I'm the director of whatever, right? They're servant leaders. First in the office, last people out in the trenches, like all the time. I run the company. I was like signing and mailing checks today, like for 2 hours, right? Like we do all the things, right? And like all of our managers are working managers, right? And like the kind of leadership that we try to promote are people who know the details and who are like in it all the time. So that kind of servant leadership kind of mentality is how how we've adapted our leadership and what we've become and what we've seen works in the kind of culture we want to create is we want to, like brewing is it's a novel craft, right? Like we're dealing with, again, like raw materials, recipes, all the things that we use to brew beer. they come from the ground. They change every day, right? They're like products of God that are harvested that have to be like somehow made in this crazy recipe, and it has to be like better every single day, right? And we're using, you know, changing ingredients and all these things that are like, everything is trying to fight us from making amazing beer. And I think if you have that mentality in production and, you know, in building a brand, that creates this like model of like servant leadership and like really, you know, being in the details and like living in like all of our managers are the best whatever, right? Like the manager of our tasting room has to be the best server, right? Our brewing manager has to be the best technical brewer, right? Our sales manager has to be the best salesperson of beer, first and foremost, right? So that's kind of how we look at talent and we look at people is, you know, are they experts in their field? Are they credible? And then can we, you know, build that culture and the team around them as like servant leaders?
So on the people side, for a while I was production manager and chief engineer and co-founder. And one thing that we did that was really awesome was we had your most important thing. So in the morning I'd go around to all the production employees and I'd say, you know, Rosalinda, do you have a most important thing today? And she'd say, what's on my list? And I'd pull out her clip, you know, the page, and I'm like, oh, you want a new chair? You want a new drill motor? You know, 3 or 4 things. And she's like, oh, I need whatever, need more gloves or something. And we'd tell them, you can have a new most important thing every day. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but we put on the list and we try and, you know, if it's simple, we try and knock it off right away. And if it's more complicated, we try and get to it eventually. And sometimes they'll be like, no, just take that off and, you know, and it was really great because, you know, I wouldn't always get in. A lot of times the production guys would be in at 6 or 7. You know, they want to get up early and get their production done. I'd come in at 8 or 9, you know. So like, you know, they see me rolling in, you know, whatever. And like, if the first thing I do, like before I even answer the phone, is go around and ask them all what their most important thing is and write it down, it's like huge, you know, and then they don't bug me the rest of the day, right? They don't come in. Like when the employees are new, you know, John, right? John's new. He's only been here 2 days. And I'm asking him what his most important thing is. He's kind of weird. And then like around lunch, he has an idea. Oh, wow. And he comes into my office. He says, Wes, hey, I've got a most important thing. What do you think about if we did this? And I say, John, that can be your most important thing tomorrow. He's like, oh, right. So anyway, so that was great for me being able to focus on my engineering too, but it was great having the most important guys. Everyone loved that. Yeah.
I think just to follow up, going along with what both you guys said, and like servant leadership, and then asking people what they need, and then like, you know, providing people with the best tool for the job is like, go and do that job also, because like we've been so open with our employees, like, tell us, you have a problem, tell us. Something going to make your job easier, tell us, let us know. But I've been amazed how many times that hasn't been communicated, even though I've been like so openly transparent that you should communicate it to me. You go start doing the job for a minute and you're like, holy shit, you've been using this piece of equipment in this condition for the last 6 months. You didn't say anything to me. I'm going to replace this right away, or I'm going to do this adjustment to it right away. And like, you know, like, the guy running the brew staff should be the best brewer there. So the second he starts doing that job, he's going to know immediately where there could be efficiencies and where his team could be better supported because he already knows it in and out, right? So yeah, just to follow up on both those, I think it just, yeah, do the job yourself for a minute and you'll see everything that's right and wrong with it, you know? Yeah, you get in there. Yeah.
Awesome. We have time for one more. I saw a hand in the back.
Sure. So, you know, as you're pointing out, people are the core of any business, not necessarily the business itself, but you know, without those people, nothing's going to happen. And you know, you've chosen to have a business in a pretty small town, and granted, there's a lot of amazing talent in this town. And how do you find these people, and how do you either attract them here, or how do you find them here? Because they usually got something to do already. Yeah. So how do you manage that within the business in a town this?
Repeating the question for everybody if you didn't hear it. How do you attract talent?
the most important thing in attracting good talent is having workers who would recommend working at your facility to their friends. And that's like a litmus test. There's a lot of people that are working at companies, they would not recommend to their friends that they work there. They're like, no way. Some of the ways that we made it cooler for, there's a whole thing with, it got crazy. At one point, I had our QC manager come in and say, Wes, I know I'm going to get a raise. I can only make $17.26 an hour. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, if I'm over that, then I don't qualify for WIC, right? Which is our Oregon food stamp or the health plan or whatever it was with her kids. And I'm like, okay, you're making $17.26. Like, sounds great. So, like, we did things like we'd have a blueberry picking day where we'd have, the guys didn't get paid for it. It wasn't like an hourly thing, but they could go out to a U-pick blueberry field and pick blueberries. We paid for all the blueberries. And they got to have blueberries. The cool thing was the people that worked the hardest picking the blueberries, they're the ones that, we paid the most to, right? Like if you picked 100 pounds of blueberries, that cost us $200. But that meant all winter long, they're pulling blueberries out of their freezer, making smoothies, thinking like, wow, these are from Real Carbon. And it's not, they don't have to pay taxes on their whole thing, blah, blah, blah. It's just like a corporate fun day. So and when we were, we couldn't afford to do healthcare for our employees. Maybe we could have, I don't know if we were super creative, but in the beginning, it didn't seem feasible at all. And I was super into supplements, and I would get with the employees and I would design a supplement program for them, and they love that. And they're like, oh, wow, well, can I get one for my wife and these and that, and like buying supplements, it was like $30 a month, and, versus, I don't know, $500 a month for healthcare or something. So they love that. So doing little things like that are huge where you can do stuff where it's, that they like it.
I thought we were drug dealing. Yeah.
Anything to add?
Sorry, what was the question?
It was how do you attract talent?
Oh yeah, geez. The thing is, like, there's like attracting talent's all about the brand, and are you credible? Do people want to work for you? Are you referred to by others? All those things. But I think the tough part here is there's effectively like a very small local pool. Sort of the bigger you get, the less of a local pool you have access to, because we're not necessarily hiring like a lot more servers, right? Or or like lower level brewing positions. We're hiring more professional positions, right? Like managers, and people do a lot of like other technical work, like scientists and marketing people. So like I think as you grow, the overall the kind of person you're looking for changes, right? The skill set and the seniority and all those things change, and it becomes less likely to be able to find local talent, and more likely that you're going to need to bring it in. And that's where, that becomes harder, right? Because like as desirable as the Gorge is for, quality of life, all the stuff right around here to do, it's also very expensive, right? Obviously, I know we're going to get into that, but it's just hard, it's so that's the challenge, right? Is hiring local talent when you can is like not the hardest thing on the planet, but when you start looking for those like more professional positions where the likelihood becomes you're hiring people from not just Portland, but like some other state, somewhere else, that's tough, right? It's tough to relocate into the Gorge, and that's where, those searches take longer. You may need to at some point like settle, and you kind of do with what you got. In some cases where, you're looking for specialized folks that just don't exist in a small town of like 7,500.
Do we have time for the quiz? Sure we do.
Quickly.
Okay, so how to pick a product and decide on a customer. What do you do? Anyone? No. Okay, you're picking a customer. The customer needs to make lots of money, right? And your product needs to help them make the money. Perfect.
NVIDIA landscaper.
Right. Okay, how to get better and more challenging work. Right, always say you can do it, but you don't know how, but you'll figure it out, right? And tell everyone that you do all innovative stuff. What do you do when you get stuck? Excellent. How do you make money if you're not a commodity brewer?
Raise prices.
No. Focus on adding maximum value, and when you get busy, raise prices. Yeah.
Kill the stuff that doesn't make money.
Right. Eat your children. Except. And how to decide how to reinvest profits. Right. Ask how it values your customer. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Wes. Can we give a hand for our panelists? Thank you guys so much for having us tonight. We have a little bit of more time. Meet a new friend, tip your bartender. We'll be back in the Dalles at Columbia Gorge Community College at the Skills Center for February. It's the 13th, February 13th. It's the second Thursday. We got some cool stuff planned. If you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter. There's a sign-up sheet on the bar back there. And drive safely. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night.